Hello everyone, I'm Ansab and the topic which I'm today going to present is ideas for social inclusion. So this is basically a report by World Bank about the relationship between government and the people, what is the current status and how it can be improved. So basic definition, social contract. So it is basically the state obligation towards the citizens and what the citizens have to do in return and what the state has to do to fulfill the requirements of its citizens and to contribute to a fairer society. So in current times, we are seeing that the current system is facing backlash because the poor are not given proper and efficient public services. Similarly, the nature of work is changing, which like the concept that the machines are taking over the people, and because of this, there is the fear of mass unemployment. Similarly, there are technological developments that are taking place, and they are raising question to the improving the ability, opportunity, and dignity of those which are most disadvantaged in society. Similarly, there is also opportunity for government that by use of technology they can reach the poor in new ways. Similarly, as technology is advancing, the complex problem solving and critical thinking are becoming more valued. So three basic questions arise basically that what can be the proposed reforms to improve the social contract and how can the government implement them and how those reforms can be financed by the government. A global new deal. So right now the culture which is prevailing in world is to not care for each other and to remain silent. So basically the social contract is broken. This is especially evident in rising protectionism. The people are more protective towards their rights as compared to duties, which is creating a gap between government and people. And this is more happening in developing countries, resulting in fewer facilities by governments towards the citizens. So basically, it is proved by research that the if someone invests in children lives in their early education, then it results in their better handling in practical life. But as you can see that the data in Latin America and Sub-Saharan Africa, there is very less spending on children under 6. Similarly, the informal employment is very large in developing zones like South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa, which is also a symptom of erosion of social contract. So some examples from developed countries where they have legislated the new social contracts to protect the labor rights and to provide them with basic facilities no matter what the economic conditions are. So first one is the Denmark's flex security, and then there is Poland and Germany, and the major one is the reform from U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, which is basically after which was basically in 1940s after the economic recession. So it ensures that the labor must be provided with basic facilities and incentives. Similarly, the women are more likely than men to experience an unexpected move because they have different circumstances and they face different conditions. So, a study suggests that in US, if increase in investment by 7% lead to an increase in intergenerational income by 30%, which also means boosting social protection, social assistance, and insurance. So it basically depicts that a small investment in early childhood results in major contribution in income mobility later. The current slide shows the demographic trends in the next 30 to 40 years. There will be a working age population contraction in China by 10 to 15%. Similarly, there will be more than half of the global population growth in sub-Saharan Africa, and the population of East Asia and Pacific will have more aged people. The nature of work is changing. One must be able to read and manipulate numbers to acquire advanced skills. Similarly, in order to provide good education to children in early stages, the basic package must include components like prenatal healthcare, birth assistance, immunization, micronutrients, and further. The social insurance system covers old age and disabled persons, so it can be achieved by shifting away from labor taxes towards general taxation. The interventions may include wage subsidies, public work schemes, asset transfers, coaching, and various forms of training. Now, CA will continue with the presentation.
Hello everyone, this is Haseeb Yunus and I will tell you about finances in social inclusion. Social inclusion cannot be achieved without financial inclusion. Social inclusion is costly and simulations suggest that the components of building human capital like early childhood development and support for literacy and numeracy by grade 3 approximately by age 10 would cost around 2.7% of GDP in low income countries and 1.2% of GDP in lower middle income countries. The most of the cost of most comprehensive human capital is estimated at 11.5% of GDP in low income countries and 2.3% of GDP in lower middle income countries. In the next slide, we have a figure 7.1 which shows the estimates of three different scenarios. First is a low income country Mali, second is a lower middle income country Indonesia, and the third one is upper middle income country which is Colombia. Low income countries will pay more than lower middle income and upper middle income country for selected element of a renewed social contract. The two different scenarios is shown in this flowchart. Bright color shows you the most comprehensive coverage and the dull colors shows you the basic coverage of these three different scenarios of the countries. Let's move to the little adult age. For the 1 million young adult 20 to 29 years of age worldwide, the average intervention cost depending on the contents of the human capital package would range from 831 US dollars to 1079 US dollar per participant. The total cost for reaching vulnerable young adults or 12.8% of the age cohort would amount to between 2.9% and 3.8% of the average GDP in low income countries and from 0.9 to 1.1% in lower middle income countries and from 0.2% to 0.3% in upper middle income countries. High income countries collect a much larger share of their national output in taxes, especially direct taxes, than do lower income countries. Low income and middle income countries by contrast rely more on indirect taxes such as consumption, sales and trade taxes. Figure 7.2 shows you the different income countries collection of tax. High income countries collect a much large share of their national output in taxes, especially direct taxes, than low income countries. These three different bars in these figures are showing you how low income, middle income and high income countries collect their taxes and from the which portion. As yellow color shows you the direct tax, blue color shows you the sales and trade tax, and orange color is showing you indirect taxes. Government can reduce tax policy and compliance gaps across several fiscal instruments which is shown in figure 7.3. These fiscal instruments are value-added tax, excise tax, personal and corporate income and property tax, as well as through fiscal regimes for extractive industries in resource-rich countries. Often a first line of reform for developing countries, the value-added tax is potentially a major source of revenue, but few countries such as Maldives and Myanmar do not have value-added tax. Many other, particularly Sub-Saharan African, also continue to rely on sales taxes. These countries include Angola, Comoros, Liberia, and São Tomé and Príncipe. Introducing a value-added tax instead of general sales tax avoid tax cascading. Tax cascading is the tax paid on tax. By taxing only the value added at each stage of the value chain. Let's move to the figure 7.3. Especially for low-income countries, the value-added tax is a potential source for financing social inclusion. You can see the blue color bar which shows you the value-added tax. It is very high in low-income country, and as moving to the middle-income countries, the yellow color is showing you the taxes for middle-income countries, which is always lower in this part. So next I would like to invite Hassan Nayaz to continue the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Haseeb. First comes the social contracts. Now, what is social contract? Actually, these are the obligations and duties of state towards its citizens and vice versa. To fulfill the needs of citizens, revenue generation is required by the state. Among others, taxes are one of the way to generate revenue. First comes the excise tax. Excise tax is a source to generate revenue. Excise tax is generally levied on tobacco, alcohol, and petroleum products. The positive aspect of excise tax is that it is easy to implement and merges nearly with every tax system. It renders social welfare and environmental substantiality. Environmental substantiality is the ability of the system to exist at a certain cost to maintain thermodynamic equilibrium. Then comes the carbon tax. Carbon tax is levied on carbon content of fuels like carbon emissions. Carbon tax is usually imposed for intent to reduce carbon emissions like CO2. It raises a substantial amount of revenue. Carbon tax rates vary widely. It is nearly 6% of the total GDP of countries like China, Iran, Russia, and Saudi Arabia. They are currently incorporated in every large economy except Brazil and United States. Some countries have large contrast in its spending on energy subsidies to that they spend on the social assistance. The Middle East and North African countries spends 3 times the amount. The graph on the right side represents the variety and vastness of spending of variations of different countries. Income and corporate taxes. Tax imposed by government on income generated by businesses and individuals. It is also a way of increasing revenue by the government and developing countries. Certain steps can be taken to increase the collection. First of all, increase must be done in number of the registered taxpayers. Laws should be made for the avoidance of loopholes. A rule must be incorporated to reduce tax avoidance. Then comes the property. Property tax is also known as mileage rate. It is usually levied using value of the property on buildings, land, houses. Personal property tax is incorporated usually on movable assets like vehicles and planes. Leaseholds generate nearly 2.9% of the GDP in high-income countries. Although property tax is applied broadly by many countries, but usually revenue generation is less because of its poor enforcement. The positive aspect of property tax is that it does not distort labor markets or affect human capital or innovative decisions. Besides different types of taxes discussed above like excise tax, carbon tax, income and corporate tax, property tax, there are some other ways to generate revenue. Natural resources and government royalties are among them. 27% of GDP of Mozambique comes from gas exploration. Similarly, 147% of the GDP of Liberia is generated from iron ore and petroleum exploration. So there are a range of financing options that are available to policymakers, and exploitation of these options require careful technical assessment combined with the political leadership. Thank you.